Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Etheria restart video. So in today's video, we're going to be going over the final shell dungeon, which unlocks at account level 50. Now, if you're not there yet, or you're still stuck on other shell dungeons, it's okay. I highly suggest that you just keep farming up shell dungeons. You want to get as much of the training data as you possibly can to level up the shells that you have access to. That is what's going to allow you to progress your account. It's where I've spent most of my time farming, not on modules, not on prowess material, not on, leveling up my heroes. It's just shells. That's where your account is going to make or break you. But if you do that, you'll eventually get up to this stage, which the most important stage to unlock, in my opinion, is Hell. Because the very first time you clear it, it gives you a guaranteed Codex of Magic, which I think is the best shell in the entire game. It's very universal, and the skill is just a little bit overpowered, in my opinion. What it does is, if you're going to use a skill, the skill that you use will then automatically reset. So the cooldowns will automatically reset. It doesn't matter how long the cooldown is. If it's 100 turns, you could just use it the next turn. It's absolutely nuts. The matrices on it are also quite good. They're good for PvP. They're good for PvE. They're good for supporters. They're good for damage dealers. So this thing can be universal. There's other really great shells in this dungeon. And this dungeon is quite straightforward, but it's unique in the way that unless you cheese it and you just use Didding or whatever, we're not going to do that today. But if you don't bring in one of each character, this boss can seem quite hard. And he's still tough. Like, you have pretty high gear requirements, but if you bring in a decent team, you can beat it. So he's got some really interesting mechanics, and this is the team that I'm going to be using here. So let me move my face real quick. I've got here, I'll move it up top. I've got Chloros in here, which I just did a video on the other day. So he's in Fury and Momentum, and his skill 3 is fully leveled up. Although you don't need his skill 3 fully leveled on this stage, you just need it to be up to 4. However, this is not like a team guide. This is more about the dungeon, because there's always questions about, hey, who do I use in place of this hero? Okay. There are two heroes here that I think people should use and should not have a replacement for, unless you have a specific damage dealer, and I'll talk about that. So the reason why I have this team is because they are all of a different element. This is really important because this boss has a very interesting mechanic where every 4 turns a certain element takes, he will then counterattack and put a unique debuff on your team that increases his damage output. So if you bring in like all light characters, he's going to counterattack a lot. And then whenever he does like this one big nuke, you're going to die. So in regards to who to bring, we'll talk about that in a second. But that's why I'm bringing all of these heroes. Now, Gigabyte, I've talked about Gigabyte in a separate video. This is, I think, by far the most important shell for supporters for account progression. Once you get to the end game and you start farming things, I think you're eventually going to take this stuff off, and you're going to start equipping more niche shells that you can drop from like the last 2 shell dungeons. But for account progression and farming purposes, I think this shell is really great on every single hero. It's even great on damage dealers. But yeah, so anyway, that's who I got working there. So the 2 heroes that I think are irreplaceable, but I'll give suggestions anyway, are Lingluo, who you get for free, and then Valerian, who is an SR. It's a light SR, but if you spend $1 in the game, you can get her. So I know a lot of people are diehard free-to-play people, but if you're not and you're willing to spend $1, you'll get Valerian. So let's go in and we'll just kind of talk about the boss's mechanics, because he looks like a blue character, but he has some unique skills that actually change his element, which is really quite cool. So he does this attack where he deals 600% damage to all enemies, ignores 30% defense, and then when he attacks an enemy with a countered affinity, he ignores 50% defense. So whenever he casts that, he changes his affinity, and he starts at blue, so he'll then go to green, then light, then dark. I don't know what the reason is for here, like the red. Maybe this is for Inferno, but right now he starts at odd, and I haven't seen him change past dark, but I haven't really paid attention, so maybe he does here. This is the other thing that I was talking about. This is a passive ability where he says, after enemies of the same affinity act 4 times cumulatively, he then deals 600 damage to enemies of that affinity. So if you bring 4 light heroes and they all go, he will then counterattack and hit all of them. And then he inflicts this evil fire, which is a stack that increases the damage you take by 40%. So you cannot bring just like all LDs. You can, if you want to cheese it, like I said, and be a bum and a nerd, but you do you, okay? But he has some other mechanics like attack down, defense down, his minions as well. But that's the whole thing, is if you bring a team of 4 different elements, then he's counterattacking less, and you have more time to actually kill him. So we're bringing Ling Luo for our healer, which is blue. We got Kloss as our damage amp in green. We have Chloros in red as our damage dealer, and then we have Valerian for light. Now, Valerian is so important because this guy might actually one-shot you or your damage dealer on the first turn. So as we put this on auto, I'll show you, like how this run goes, because what's most important is the mechanic. So these minions, as you saw, they can put up silence and stuff like that. Ling Luo is amazing here because she can cleanse that. Now, there's other healers in the game that can cleanse it. Now, he did not one-shot me, but if he would have, Valerian, who has her skill 3 fully leveled up, would have saved him, which is why she's so important. You need her fully skilled up just on her skill 3 for her to really maximize her potential. I had a video yesterday talking about the most efficient heroes, and I do mention that in there. So, like I said, Ling Luo is our main healer here. She just, the heals are amazing. The fact that she can cleanse off the silence is really important for Chloros because he wants to land his Doom Toll, which is where most of the damage comes from. This boss can also have his turn meter stolen and all that, but you see, because he used his skill, he ended up going into the green element. So when he uses that skill again, which is on the 1-turn cooldown, he will then go into the light disorder mode, which is probably where most of the cheesers that are running Didding are killing him. So because we have a group of heroes that are not the same element, that's why this boss kind of seems easy. It's because he's not counterattacking a lot. He's not putting up these stacks that increase our damage. So we have enough time to kill him. After this, I'll kind of talk about some replacements. But the thing is if you replace one of these heroes, you have to find another replacement for the damage dealer because you're really looking for 4 different types of elements here. So you see we're getting a little bit low. So he's ramping up. So you have to kill him quick, and you have to have enough sustain, which is where Ling Luo and Valerian really come in handy. So our Chloros is doing a solid job here of kind of doing enough damage. The Gigabyte as well is helping our Lingluo kind of loop around. You need to build at this point in the game probably a little bit of speed on everybody, just to get them cooking enough so the boss doesn't loop you. So you see, he had enough there to take out the Chloros, not the Chloros, the Kloss. But because of Chloros' mechanic there, we ended up kind of clutching that out. So that was a close fight, but we got the job done. So who can we bring here? And another thing I want to mention is once you actually beat that boss once on Hell, you will then get that Codex of Magic. So if you want to throw it on your debuffer or something like that, like if you wanted to throw this on Kloss, you totally could. If you wanted to throw Codex of Magic on Lingluo, so she has double heals back to back, you totally could. It's such an amazing shell that it just works out for sure. Okay, now if you're a cheeser, just go cheese with Ditting. I don't need to tell you about that composition. But if you want to kind of mix and match based on the mechanics of this, which if for Inferno, I don't know if Ditting is going to have enough damage. I think you're really going to have to work around the mechanics, which is why I wanted to actually release this video, because the mechanics of the dungeon are important. So if you don't want to bring Lingluo, which I think you should, but maybe you don't have a good fire damage dealer, and you have a good water damage dealer like Shiada, or you have Rosa, who I think could be quite good in here. I don't know if his mechanic works with Rosa's follow-up attacks, because remember, he says 4 consecutive attacks from whatever element. So if her follow-up attack counts as an attack, she might be a little bit risky. So let's say you want to use Shiada, right? If you're using Shiada, then I think it's quite simple. You just bring in Sonya. So then if you bring in Sonya, that means that you have to switch out Kloss. If you switch out Kloss, then I think the clear favorite is Dinah. So you still have your damage amp. You have a lot of your DPS still with your Shiada or your Rosa. You have your healer, which is great in Sonya. You can also increase the max HP of your Valerian if you want to. Remember, your very first run, you can manual it just to get that Codex of Magic. That's going to be really important. But whenever Valerian goes into her Hazy Dream, if you use someone like Sonya on her, Sonya increases the max HP of whoever she's using this on. So if you manual it, you can target the Valerian and her shields will be huge. So that'll be a really nice option for you as well. Now, if you have Kloss and you want to use Rosa or Shiada, for your fire healer, I have propped up Chiaki a lot. The amount of damage reduction from this skill, I think, will be huge for this dungeon. If I had like a Dinah built up or something like that, I would love to showcase her here, because I think Shiada, Valerian, a Kloss, and maybe Chiaki could clear this too easily. But this is the team I'm using. Like I said, the most important thing, though, is to understand the mechanic. You need 4 separate elements. That's going to give you the best opportunity to clear this without, needing some crazy amount of DPS or cheese effect in here. So hopefully this was useful, guys. The other shells that they have in this dungeon are also quite good. Like, I'm really impressed by this lighthouse character. The fact that this is on a 2-turn cooldown is really amazing. Being able to heal by 20% and then, boost your turn meter by 20%. And this is also unawakened. If it's awakened, what does this end up doing? I think it's probably just a bigger boost to your, 25% heal and 25% turn meter progress. This is awesome. This is kind of like a pseudo. What's this other Gigabyte? This is on. This doesn't have any cooldown, but it's for every 3 actions that the enemy takes. The matrices are also a little bit more interesting. These are like endgame matrices. This is a great PvP shell, obviously, but I think it could certainly have uses in Inferno modes. Count's pretty cool. 1200 attack, I don't think people should really sleep on, by the way. And then the Leech Life shell could come in handy for some damage dealers, also for Inferno. I really think that's what they're aiming towards. Fortissimo, I really want to understand how this heal mechanic works. As long as after I farm up enough shells and have enough of the training data, I'll eventually test all of these out. And then who was the last one? Oh yeah, Codex of Magic. Codex of Magic, Lighthouse, Fortissimo, and Count. So anyway, guys, that is kind of a walkthrough of the final shell dungeon there. I think it's Rengokutsu. I hope it helped. Hope you enjoyed. And go crush them. Go get that Codex of Magic. All right, I'll catch you on the next one. See ya.